They were intending to fight, and they shot and killed those two boys. This alerted people in the village that the Americans were coming. The Americans proceeded to form a line and head into the village and faced a small amount of resistance.
There were 600 Americans that came to attack this small village, but the warriors were ready. At the end of this Battle of Mississinewa, the Americans thought they won, but the natives thought they won. You can decide, as you read more about history, maybe who did win. Back across the field, do you see those men running? Those are the scouts and spies. They're the first ones who come out and get the lay of the land so the commanders know where to direct the rest of the troops.
The Americans thought that they were attacking the Silver Eagles town. They made an immediate charge for the residents.
That was real good. Oh, and he went down. Oh, that probably brought your troops. That was very loud.
What do you think they did with the real life?
Do you see there's a loose horse out there in the field? That happens.
The Indian villagers gave very
over here. Why is
resistance.
they
Hey,
need to come
Rico
over here?
Elliott, might want to take a video of this.
Fired from the other side, but on the whole, it was not a large battle. The results were that 8 Indian men were killed, 42 were taken prisoners. Only 8 of the prisoners were men, the rest of them being women and children.
It's going to be really loud.
In 1812, this area of Mississinewa was in the heart of what the British had hoped would be an independent Indian barrier state. In 1755, during the French and Indian War, the British had proposed that all lands between the Ohio River and the Mississippi through the Great Lakes would be a place where the British could organize all the Great Lake tribes into a confederation that would be independent of the U.S. but under British control.
After the attack on the first day, it was discovered this was not Silver Eagles village. More than likely, it was a Delaware Indian village.
Over here on your far right, you see they're taking their prisoners to the blockhouse. That's the thing that looks like a cabin out there in the field.
After the attack, it was discovered that, after the attack, the dragoons went down the river to attack a number more villages. The infantry stayed back to guard the prisoners and set up camp for the first night. The Army set up the same type of encampment it had used on the march to Mississinewa. A square was formed by the men and their horses. 60 yards away from each corner angle of the square was a small outpost. Here's where Campbell placed his outer guards.
Forming a square was something the military often did back then. They literally lined up in a square to protect themselves or guard prisoners, blockhouse. When the British started gathering all the tribes into a confederation, they started to see some progress with the British support because they destroyed 1/4 of the United States Army at St. Clair's defeat. It was known as the Battle of the Wabash in November of 1791. So that's before this, but that's setting the scene for what happened here. So the War of 1812 in this area was being fought for control of this Indian barrier state.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's straight ahead the other way. No. Yeah, where you can't see.
The troops now are getting ready for the night as they form a square and put guards at each corner of the camp. You'll see that there's a lot of different uniforms and hats. The militia could wear whatever they wanted. Those who were enlisted troops are the ones with the matching uniforms.
Each side of the square was made up of men posted from each unit. Of Campbell's force, 1/3 of the men were always on guard. They were placed close enough to each other to prevent Indian infiltration going unnoticed. Behind them were the horses, the men off guard, and their fires. None of the defenses were what the Army would have liked. Many of their axes had broken on the trip up here. Felling trees for defensive perimeters became problematic. The size of the square is estimated to have been 500 feet on each side. When Campbell, who had been attacking other villages that day, arrived back, he was unhappy with the campsite. He thought it was too big for the total number of men comprising his command. Though apprehensive of its layout, Lieutenant Colonel Campbell made no changes to the command's placement within the square.
You see, each of the soldiers has a bag hanging off of their hip. Whoa!
On the morning of December 18th, the men awoke about 4 a.m. In later accounts, some say this was normal. Some others thought there was a false alarm. Campbell called an officers meeting to talk about what they should do.
What's back there along the tree line? You see people back in the trees? They're attacking the blockhouse now.
All realized their mission had not been met. Against them was the weather. It was cold and bitter. They were also very low on supplies. A half an hour before sunrise, and in the middle of the officers' conference, the Indians attacked. The Indians started their attack at the right rear corner of the square, starting at the outpost that had been put there. This outpost was under the command of Captain Benoni Pierce. He would be the first man killed in the battle. Pierce sacrificed his life so that his troops posted there could fall back to the main line in safety.
Yeah.
You're dead. Stay there.
That one person is dead. I have that place.
I was part of the militia when I did it.
How many of you have heard of Chief Francis Godfroy? Chief Francis Godfroy was the last war chief of the tribe of Miami, Indiana. Godfroy was elected to be war chief at the age of 23 because his predecessor, deaf man, was well-aged and was not prepared to lead the attack against Colonel Campbell. So the evening of the first attack at Mississinewa village, or Osage village, where the town of Peru, Indiana now is, where the Mississinewa River feeds into the Wabash River, the Great Council was held to determine who should lead the Miami and their allies to defend their homelands on the morning of December 18th.
This was happening on the frontier. There wasn't much here, as some people are dressed to survive in the woods. They had to march a long way to get here, the Americans did. They were fighting in 12 inches of snow. Can you imagine that? You probably get school called off when you have 12 inches of snow, don't you?
Although at the time this was considered Miami country, many of their neighboring tribes were living along the Mississinewa at that time. We know that at the council that the Shawnee were also represented. We know that the Delaware were represented. We also know that the Wyndham were represented and that at least one Osage Indian who had married into the movement overall lasted about an hour or less.
As you can see, the Americans have prisoners they're taking with them as they leave. They're going to march those prisoners all the way back to Ohio. Are y'all going to look at maps when you get home? See where this is, where Ohio is?
Campbell allotted his remaining horses to carry the women and children. The horses also carried the wounded of both sides. Those most seriously wounded were carried between two horses on a stretcher, and everyone else walked. The army marched only 2 miles the first day. It would take them 6 days to get back to Ohio. When they arrived, most of Campbell's command were so severely frostbitten as to be incapacitated for further service. Which side won the Battle of Mississinewa is open to debate. Both sides could have an argument for the claim of victory. The army surprised and destroyed 4 Indian villages that set about to ally many of the tribes east of the Mississippi to resist the Americans. This resistance, in many ways, is what caused fear and provoked the Americans to send expeditions into the Indiana Territory against any natives that were allied with either Tecumseh or the British. Many of the tribes in this area had been allied with the British and were strongly considering it at this point in time. Tecumseh and his federation were allied with the British.
Up here in front, in the green, we have the British sharpshooters. Rather than just aiming in into a whole wall of people, they could pick out individual targets. They're very skilled.
Though Tecumseh and his men were not in the Battle of Mississinewa, it said that the old women, when they were being led away, kept telling the soldiers, Tecumseh is coming. Tecumseh is 4 miles away.
Off to the left, we have the British regulars marching onto the field. That was a cannonball landing.
The very first guy, he's actually been in the military.
Kids, don't lay down. Kids, go down. Sit down, kids. Down. Get down. There you go.
Yeah, that was a good idea. There's a cannon. It's over there. Oh, you can see an Indian back there. Look at him. He's over there. No, he has a slap on.
Yay.
Hey, you can move over here.
I can't see that one over there. That'd be nice to see that.
I don't even know if you can see it from over there.
Do you know how these guns work? They have black powder,
You can see him firing.
and they put a lead ball in them and shove it down there, and then they have a flint. And the flint hits steel, causes a spark that goes down the barrel, and that's how the gun shoots.
Fire. Like the
Fourth of July.
Like the fuse.
Small. Powder, yeah.
When you walk around here today, or hopefully when you come back Saturday or Sunday, feel free to ask any questions of any of our participants. We all want to talk to you. We all want to tell you what we're wearing, what we're doing, what we're eating, about our tents.
On the far side.
You might notice that that the Americans and British are standing in lines on the field. This is sometimes called Napoleonic style warfare. You'll see that the Native Americans are hiding behind brush and in the weeds and out of sight to shoot.
See how the smoke is getting really thick? And they'd have to keep fighting, even though they might not even be able to see very well what they're aiming at. We have American militia flanking the Indians back there across the field. Horses were like the tanks of the era. If you saw a horse coming, it would be just like if you saw a tank today. You better get out of the way or be ready to defend yourself. That's one of the things infantry formed a square against cavalry. Can you imagine training a horse to stand still through all of this? Believe it or not, some of these horses actually love doing this and will run at you.
You do not. You will die.
Mr. J, what sort of guns are the British sharpshooters using? What makes them special? There's two kinds of guns out here. The sharpshooters up front here have the early rifled barrels. They have a groove in them so that when the ball goes out, it's spinning and it's far more accurate. The other people have the barrels are smooth inside.
The rifle was also the preferred weapon of many of the militiamen.
See, a native just scalped one of the Americans, took the trophy. Can you tell us about that?
So, war is not pretty. One of the things that was part of warfare in that time was scalping both tomahawks and or knives. And many attribute this action to the British specifically recruiting and rewarding that activity. We do not have any full-sail record that this was done widely by Native Americans until European contact.
Yeah, you can see that American back there that's dead. He's just.
We have a variety of cannon firing here. Some are what are called 3-pounders. That means a cannonball weighed 3 pounds. We have some 6-pounders and maybe even an 8-pounder.
During the War of 1812, some tribes allied with Tecumseh would ally with the British forces. A few tribes would ally with the Americans. The Miami specifically